Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. Our major stories tonight: the National Commission for the General Vote Counting rounds up activities amidst reports of discrepancies and the lack of transparency. Musa Njoya, an eyewitness, reports glaring discrepancies between the figures on PVs submitted by commission members and those representing political parties. Meanwhile, the campaign team of Issa Chuma Bakari, presidential candidate of the CNSF party, has begun publishing what he says are authentic results from some strategic divisions. Away from that, Elekam faces criticism for its silence on electoral fraud allegations with accusations of complicity with the government. Civil society actors say for Cameroonians to accept the outcome of the election, then it should be void of any manipulation. You were listening to some of them in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. Those are major stories tonight. The news in full in a jiffy. Once more, good evening and thank you so much for choosing Equinoxe Television for presentation. I am Immaculate Fogwe. Naval authorities in Limbe have apprehended 7 individuals impersonating custom officers at sea. However, a second boat carrying suspects managed to evade capture. In a separate incident, a tragic loss of life has been reported in Banga, where a man succumbed to severe bleeding with neighbors citing an unknown illness that went untreated at the hospital. Details of this with Smart Chikan Gabriel.
In the boot of a military van in Limbe, some 7 individuals caught by Navy officials. According to reports from the Navy in Limbe, they were caught during a patrol of the Navy on the high sea. It is alleged that they have been faking as custom officers, but after questioning them, it was realized they were telling lies. The Navy caught in their keeping some arms. Over in the Mongo division in Banga, it was a man who originated from Ndu in the northwest region that was found dead in front of his house. An inhabitant we spoke to was not aware of his identity.
We don't know him as neighbor.
We knew him as a neighbor, and no one has full details about him. He will always tell us that he had kids, but we are totally lost. He has been sick, but getting better when we saw him sit by his door. Another neighbor says, I used to give him food around the place he made little business, but for more than a year now, I have been asking him to go home and get treated because he wasn't looking well. But he said he won't go because he will go there and die. The man whose only name we got as a John was a palm wine tapper, and he has been suffering from an illness nobody knew about because of lack of medication and follow-up that he gave up the ghost over the weekend.
An unfortunate incident over there. And now we move to the northwest region, precisely in Bamenda, where growing waste crisis is sparking urgent calls for circular economy that converts waste into wealth, unlocking economic opportunities and addressing the city's mounting waste management challenges. But can turning this waste into wealth be an answer to Bamenda's waste problem? Our Northwest Chief Correspondent Bustela answers the question. Now we're going to Bamenda, where growing waste crisis is sparking urgent calls for a circular economy that's able to convert waste into wealth, unlocking economic opportunities and also addressing the city's mounting waste management challenges. But can turning this waste into wealth be an answer to Bamenda's problem of waste or poor waste disposal? Our Chief Correspondent in the Northwest Region, Bustela, has the answers to this question.
The median strips of Bamenda streets are littered with heaps of uncollected garbage plastics, metal scraps and biodegradable materials, spilling across sidewalks. To many, it is an eyesore, but for some, it is also untapped opportunity. This is Yiwonge Jude, a 41-year-old father of 4, seen here sorting metals from piles of trash on Commercial Avenue, though unaware of where they end up.
When I go
to any dump site, I select the copper wires, the iron bars, and go to weigh them.
I go weigh them. I feel weigh them sometimes.
After weighing them, I can raise between 1,000 and 5,000 francs CFA. Out of what I earn, I am able to take care of my family.
Chop 2,000.
Experts say jute work mirrors the first step of what's known as a circular economy, a system where waste is reused, recycled, and reintegrated into production instead of being dumped. Without infrastructure or government incentives, most recyclables still end up here on the streets or in open dump sites. At the recent Africa Circular Economy Alliance conference, participants urged African cities to view waste not as a burden, but as a development resource.
For Cameroon, I think by taking the step to develop their roadmap, identify their priorities, this is just the first step in identifying sources of financing. And of course, looking at how the private sector can come on board as well, because we know that for a country such as Cameroon that is so vibrant, that there is a private sector that could be harnessed to drive circularity in the country.
For Bamenda's residents, that policy shift cannot come soon enough. But until then, the city's trash heaps remain a reminder of both neglect and the potential for green innovation.
Bustela reporting in Bamenda. Now we talk something else, move to politics. Days to the proclamation of the October 12, 2025 presidential elections or election results, the temperature in Garua increases as the population desperately awaits with hope that Issa Chuma Bakari will be proclaimed successor of 92-year-old President Paul Biya. As the population holds its breath in anticipation, economic activities have come to a near standstill, with businesses and markets experiencing a significant shutdown. Innocent Aze has the details.
People in Garua, North region of Cameroon, are withholding their breath few days to the proclamation of the October 12, 2025 presidential election results by the Constitutional Council. Customers are hard to find this period, according to this businessman. To have a broader view or understanding of the situation, one needs to visit the commercial sites of the city of Garua. Just like other traders, Abubakar has seen his business decline recently. You can see for yourself, activities are slow. You spend the entire day without selling. Nothing is moving in all sectors. But wherever you find yourself in the town of Garua, the same statement infiltrates your eardrums. Change is all we need. The temperature here changes daily as the date for the proclamation of the presidential election results shrink.
Innocent Aze reporting there. Now to one of our major lead stories. Elekam's silence on allegations of electoral fraud has sparked intense scrutiny, with many questioning the body's independence and accountability. A civil society actor is accusing Elekam of conniving with the government for the falling concerns about the integrity of Cameroon's electoral process, as Mala Glory tells us.
This is one of the videos on the several cases of electoral fraud that were recorded during the October 12 presidential elections and which have been circulating on social media for over a week now. Cameroonians are shocked over the silence of Elekam, which is an independent organization in charge of electoral process in Cameroon. According to civil society actor David Mukudi, since the elections day, Elekam has been silenced despite accusations of fraud.
On a vu comment certains de ce personnel de l'échange Cameroun.
We have seen how some of officials of Elekam have been tortured by the population because they were suspected to falsifying return reports. One was even caught here in Douala on election day trying to run away with the ballot papers. And Elekam's office in the Douala 5 subdivision that was engulfed by the angry population And yet, the last meeting of the Electoral Council last Friday didn't mention any of these incidents.
D'aucun de ces éléments observés sur le terrain.
David Mukudi furthers that Elections Cameroon is playing a double game.
Et ce qui sort des bureaux de vote, c'est Elections Cameroon qui doit.
Any information from polling centers is to be communicated by Elecam. We have also seen 2 candidates who stepped down to support other candidates. Yet Elecam did not come out to communicate on the electoral laws, but instead the Ministry of Territorial Administration, which threatened and said the ballot papers of the various candidates will be present in different polling stations.
Qui normalement relève de la compétence d'Elections Cameroon.
Mukudi adds that with all these irregularities, Cameroonians believe Elecam is working in conspiracy with the regime.
Si effectivement le procès verbal d'élection fait.
If the return reports of Elecam is not clear, let the representative of different political groups be permitted to bring their own return reports for confrontation so that truth can be unveiled. But refusing to permit such confrontations give room to suspicion.
Un esprit de suspicion.
Civil society actors and Cameroonians at large calls on Elecam not to accept manipulations by the administration so that truth can prevail.
And calls for the respect of the truth of the ballot box are rising to the sky as the Constitutional Council prepares to proclaim the official result of the presidential election. There are expectations that the Constitutional Council will avoid a situation of chaos by respecting the will of the people, as Babla Jonathan reports.
As Cameroon moves closer to the official proclamation of results of the October 12, 2025 presidential election by the Constitutional Council, tension is growing across the country. The growing tension emanates from the people's quest for change after more than 4 decades of leadership by the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, and allegations of fraud maneuvers to maintain President Paul Biya in power.
As you said rightly, the context is quite tense politically. This comes at a time when the country seems primed for change, and I think that's what we're going through. We're looking at history in the making. The country is changing, and what we see is both resistance from those who don't want change and a demand for change from the other side. So it's creating these very deep tensions that we have to deal with.
International human rights defender Barrister Agbobala condemns the unlawful manipulation of results of the presidential election. He adds that stealing the people's vote is stealing their humanity. And to senior journalist Eric Chinje, there are only 2 options.
We can either let those who are in power keep power at the expense of everybody else, or allow those who demand change to provide the kinds of resistance that inevitably end up in conflict. I'm hoping that we will avoid that.
Like many Cameroonians, he says enough is enough. 4 decades of suffering, poverty, misery, hardship, and what has been qualified as hostage-taking cannot continue.
Things cannot continue the same way. Something has to give. We cannot continue to hope that a handful of people, less than 1% of the population, less than 0.1% of the population, will control most of the resources of this country. It cannot be. Something has to give. And if they resist, if they continue to resist, then we all may have to pay the price. And that's what we should do our gone down best to avoid.
In one of his recent press statements, Barrister Agbobala says history will remember not those who stole the people's vote, but those who stood out courageously to fight for truth and justice.
And the Bishop of Bafoussam, His Lordship Paul Luntukunu, has urged, and during a strong-worded pastoral message, has urged the authorities of Cameroon to respect the truth of the ballot box. According to him, just this truth can set Cameroon free. We have more with Sidi Chakutu.
While Cameroonians await the proclamation of the presidential election results, Bishop Paul Luntukunu of Bafoussam issued a post-electoral message urging Cameroonian authorities and political actors to respect the truth of the ballot following the October 12th presidential vote. I call on all stakeholders who took part in the electoral process, especially at this time, and to the various candidates in the October 12th election to act consciently and respect the truth of the ballot box. Citing moral integrity and the Church's social teaching, the prelate praised the citizens who refused electoral corruption and called tampering with votes a denial of the people's dignity. Refusing to take into account the vote of each citizen, denying each citizen their fundamental right to freely express their will in the democratic context provided by the law is contrary to the normal course of affairs in our country. He condemned both the manipulation of results and the repression of peaceful citizens, warning that true peace can only be built on truth. In my humble opinion, prevention is better than cure. Otherwise, it is better to act on the potential and known causes of violence rather than prepare to confront new hotbeds of tensions. I also condemn the attempts to intimidate and repress citizens who are currently demanding the truth of the ballot boxes. In his message, the bishop emphasized in the fact that the people are murmuring and are demanding the truth of the ballots. He added that ignoring their will could fuel tension and undermine peace.
Beaucoup de citoyens se sont illustrés par une intégrité morale sans pareille, refusant d'être complices de la tricherie électorale, cette délinquance qui se manifeste par le bourrage des urnes ou la falsification des procès-verbaux. Il est aujourd'hui question de la vérité des urnes. C'est cette vérité des urnes que le peuple réclame actuellement en continuant de murmurer.
Bishop Luntukunu concluded by reminding decision makers that they now stand before the tribunal of history and of God, urging them to proclaim the truth of the ballot and nothing but the truth.
And that report done by Sidi Chakutu on the outing of the Bishop of Bafoussam ends this first part of the news. Talking Point comes up next. On the line in Boya is a civil society actor. He's known as NJI Lucas. Good evening. It's a pleasure having you on Talking Point tonight.
Good evening, Immaculate. It's a pleasure having me on Talking Point tonight.
A complaint has been filed against the divisional officer for Misaje. Misaje is a locality found in Dongamantum Division, the Northwest region, and it was filed by the Cameroon National Salvation Front Party of Issa Chuma Bakari. The party is accusing the DO of chasing out CNSF party representatives from polling stations in Misaje, depriving them of supervising the voting process in the 47 polling stations in that subdivision. How serious is such an allegation in an election context?
The National Salvation Front, as many now know, or the FSNC political party, whose party chairperson is Issa Chuma Bakari, who contested the October 12, 2025 presidential elections, filed a complaint at the office of the SDO. Of course, this complaint, as we all know, centered on how their militants were prevented from taking part in the observation process or to represent their party. Immaculate, it is obvious that it is not only in Dongamantum that we had such high degree of fraud. It cut across, as you certainly observe from the different police stations. And what is most important here is, this is not only having an effect to that particular polling station, it is having an effect in the entire process. That is to say that the election that took part on that particular day was marked by these things, where representatives of other political parties who were not from the ruling civilian party were prevented by some unscrupulous fellows who thought they were acting in favor of their party. It is worth mentioning that this is an unlawful act, and as it is, the party says they called the divisional officer and they wrote such as they have written. And what is equally important for us to note is that this is totally against the law. And it is obvious that when you look at that particular situation, it was orchestrated by people who call themselves elites. These are the people whom we have identified as the Judas of their own, the Judas Iscariot, who have decided to sell the people for 30 pieces of silver.
Now, NJI Lucas, you earlier said reports of fraud were echoed in several other parts of the northwest and southwest regions in favor of the ruling party. However, we are aware that the population had to stay indoors due to the lockdown that was imposed by separatist fighters. Are you convinced that the preliminary results that have been circulating of these regions circulating indeed reflects the will of the people, and how much is it a cause for concern?
Yes, Immaculate. The non-state armed groups on such a day had said people should not go out and vote. As much as we know they are in factions, and a different faction came out, some said they want the people to participate. I think this is happening because we have been talking to them and they were able to see. Howbeit, I may not even go on that direction, that is to look at the low turnout because of the armed conflict. But I want to look at from the area that is the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon have most the people who truly do not like Mr. Biya. It is worth mentioning. A majority of these people, if you were to ask them to raise their hands and tell you who they prefer without you necessarily bringing in the ballot to them, they will tell you by the raising of their hand that they don't want Mr. Biya as the president of this country. Then I wonder how possible such a people, though we had a low turnout, and the low turnout, the few who turned out on the 12th of October and voted, they did not vote Mr. Biya. As per the preliminary result or the provincial result that emanated from these different ends. And I said in one of my discourse that the elites decided that the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon is going to serve as a point of joker or the joker to give Mr. Biya a winning, because it was obvious that if it's about the other regions, the people had made known their intention. We observed the election fever. I'll go by some of the polling stations I observed and some of the polling stations I was part of. I'll tell you that even in these polling stations, the men in uniform, the defense and security forces who turned up within these areas, as per the report, did not even vote for the incumbent. Yes, it is obvious. And what is quite unfortunate, when I say they did not vote, I am looking at it, Immaculate, from the point of the total number of votes as per these people. There were polling stations that had just about 20 people who voted. And among the 20 people, defense and security forces voted about 8 or so. But the total number of those who voted for Mr. Biya in that particular polling station was not more than 3. So it is obvious that in this case, this is what happened. Now, on the aspect of the low turnout, that we are seeing this high level of fraud, we are seeing in other regions. I'll go by what the divisional officer for Ndonga Mantung, I think, said, that they had a total of 100 people who voted. But in that area, we are seeing 2,000 people. That discrepancy, such a discrepancy is evidence of the fact that it was rigged with fraud.
Now, still talking about irregularities noticed on October 12, a CPDM militant in Ginicom Jinicom is a locality found in Boyo Division, still in the northwest region. His name is Maurice Tibam. In his resignation letter dated October 15th, he denounces massive fraud in his locality. And according to him, less than 130 people showed up at the Jinicom Community Hall, where Elecam had converged all polling stations of that municipality. To his greatest surprise, 2,241 people voted for the current president, and that's according to what he said. And do you think his resignation letter will in any way have an effect on the consideration of figures from this division?
I want to say this. I want to go behind this to talk to the defense and security forces of the country, Immaculate. I want to talk to Elecam, and I want to talk to the Constitutional Council that is charged with the reading of the result in the end. Please, defense and security forces of the Republic of Cameroon, this is a moment for us to show our neutrality. It is a moment that we have to put the law of the Republic above the partisan perspective with regards to handling things in our Republic. We are Republicans and we have to be Republicans. And the same is going to Elecam. Dr. Eric Esuse and Eno Abraham, please, this is a moment for you all. To the Constitutional Council, I want to say that from what Mr. Morris said when he resigned, it is only a tip of the iceberg of the gross vote rigging. Vote rigging is not an ordinary rigging or election rigging. It is a crime against humanity because someone's vote that was casted has been stolen by the said person, and it suffices that something be done about it. So please, let us be Republican enough.
Elecam seems to be silent about these different irregularities you have outlined now. During their last press conference, Eno Abrams Egbe said the elections were carried out hitch-free across the 10 regions of Cameroon. How do you respond to his statement that elections were carried out hitch-free? Were they really hitch-free?
The elections were organized hitch-free. It means that ballot boxes were not destroyed at any point. The people were not attacked, such as people could attack those who went to administer elections, especially in the restive regions, that is the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic. That is the aspect that Elecam is talking about, hitch-free. However, the elections did not go hitch-free because there was an act of theft. There was an act of fraud. That is not actually hitch-free. Those are hitches. There was an act committed, as Maurice Tibam said, the reason why he resigned from the Cameroon People Democratic Movement Party, that his resignation letter is coming on because he had seen gross exaggeration of electoral theft or theft of the ballot papers or the stuffing of the ballot box, where only 130 people voted, only for him to see later 2,200 and something people emanating from Jinicom, from the said area. So that is exactly what is known as not hitch-free. The above mention is hitch-free, that some of these things happen, but this aspect did happen. So this is to Eric Esuse once more. Please, love this country more than what you think you are making. If you truly love this country, this is a moment to save this country from these lies and from this stuffing of the ballot box, or from this gross stuff of the boxes as we observed on the 12th of October 2025.
Now, still talking about the elections, Musa Njoya, he's one of those who attended a session of the National Commission for the General Counting of Votes in Yaoundé. In a report, he says there are drastic discrepancies between figures mentioned in the minutes submitted to the Commission and those held by representatives of political parties, a situation that forced the CNSF representative to walk out of that room during the counting process. What could be the outcome? What are the potential consequences if the right winner is not proclaimed by the President of the Constitutional Council?
Yes, Immaculate. As said by Musa Njoya that there is gross discrepancy. It is not an ordinary discrepancy. There is gross discrepancy with regards to what the difference as concerning this is, the discrepancy. I'll take, for example, the total number of voters as registered in the electoral roll that we have for the 2 English-speaking regions and the entire country. It's easier for people to know. I'll go by Toko. I'll go by exactly what has happened in some of these places. Let me take the case of Toko. Let me take the case of Batibo, for example. Batibo is said to have registered 5,000 and something votes. The area itself is not up to 5,000 inhabitants. So the worst is that within the context of the ongoing armed conflict, where Batibo, for example, had one of the dreaded separatist leaders who murdered people in broad daylight. That is to tell you how the area is grossly disconnected from the things that are happening, that are on the ground. That is to say that the people in that area, no matter what, cannot prefer Mr. Biya as a president. Let us not mince words. Let us not say these things as if we are twisting them. The people in that area are not for Mr. Biya. It is obvious. The people within that area are not for Mr. Biya. The worst is that it is an area that does not have up to 5,000 people. In this country, if the government is truly for the people, let us get that data. Let us test the fingerprints on that particular return sheet. There were 2 registered. One is pasted in front of the door of the polling station, and the other is on the table, of the chairperson, who goes through it to see if at all your name is there. If we can get that and take it for a forensic test to determine those who voted, then we will have to hold exactly those who did that. And this is what I'm recommending, that if these people truly want to tell Cameroonians that people voted for Mr. Biya massively as such, let us have that return sheet, or let us have that sheet. And what is quite unfortunate is that Elecam made it in a way that you sign here and you sign on the other side, but the middle part of that report that carries the data as concerning what we are talking about does not have any signature. That is another trick, which I want to call on Dr. Eric Esuse. Please, let us love Cameroon more than the way we love the things that we are having, the material things, the love for humanity. Like I said some time ago, that political correctness that defeats human feeling is equal to evil. And let us not perpetrate evil on the people.
In as much as we know that there are several trends, we all know and we are all aware that only the President of the Constitutional Council has a right to proclaim who the rightful winner of the 2025 presidential elections is. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation on Talking Point tonight.
It has been my pleasure being on Equinoxe this evening from Boya. Thank you so much for having me. And let Cameroonians continue to remain optimistic.
And that's what put a cap to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for always staying with us. Stay in the company of interesting programs on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now. See you tomorrow, same time, God willing.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte. De lundi à vendredi sur Equinoxe Télévision.
Alors, est-ce que les